a new tax system that promises to widen India's meager tax-paying base, eliminate double taxation or the cascading impact of taxes, and improve ease of doing business in India. And though the goods and services tax in India is a dual tax with a multi-rate structure to achieve revenue neutrality, it's expected to be an improvement on the erstwhile indirect tax regime. In its first 100 days, has GST shown signs of delivering on these promises? Well, that's the big question we're asking this evening. Joining us on the show is Abhishek Rastogi, partner at Khaitan & Co, and Sumit Dutt Majumdar, former chairman of CBEC. Welcome to Bloomberg Quint. I'm also joined this evening by my colleague Payaswini Upadhyay, who's been tracking the entire GST story and his journey through 100 days. So before we get to our panel, Payaswini, I just want a quick word from you, because you've been tracking this so minutely. If you had to describe the entire experience, what has it been and where really in this journey are we 100 days later?
Tamanna, it's the answer lies on several fronts. You can look at it as in terms of the challenges people faced. You can look at it in terms of the changes that GST, this new indirect tax regime has brought in. You can also look at it from the perspective of the responsiveness of the government. Yeah. So every time there has been a hue and cry that whether it's exporters, whether it's rates. Nobody can at least say that the government hasn't given them a patient hearing. The GST Council has been really responsive. Now, those responses can play out either way. Let's take, for instance, the taxing, the filing of the tax returns, right? So there is one set of people who are saying that, look, the GSTN is not ready. The Goods and Services Tax Network is not ready. So we need more time, okay? And the unorganized sector especially needed time to move on to a slightly more, a principled way of filing taxes. Now, there is one set of people who said that, okay, extend the timelines. Now, those extended timelines didn't work with another stakeholder, which is your exporters. Because, the moment you move your timelines, the invoice level detail filing doesn't happen, absolutely. And the exporters don't get the refund. So there's no way that, they can make all stakeholders happy with one move. Now, for instance, rates, every time they see, representations being made that, rates need to be tinkered with, some of the items are having an inflationary impact, the GST Council takes notice of it and tinkers with rates. But that throws in disarray the ERP implementation, right? The software is not equipped to then on a monthly basis, designed to take these rate changes, which means that your ASPs, your GSPs, their network goes awry.
No, so there's no pleasing
everybody.
There's no pleasing all formula, one formula fits all.
Right.
And perhaps some would argue that it is not the right way to keep trying to please everyone either, because we took the plunge on 1st July. In fact, let me start by asking that question to Mr. Majumdar. I just want to know your first opinion or response, sir, on the way the government has handled the implementation in the first 100 days. Yes, they have been responsive. There's been a lot of tinkering of little rates. And do you think that was the only way forward?
Look, as I see it, any reform or any change of the scale of GST, as we are doing it, is unique because we have dual structure. Both the center as well as the 31 states are doing it concurrently and jointly. It was expected that it won't be very smooth sailing. There will be some problems. There will be some hiccups. But what we saw in the first 2 months was that it was more than hiccups. Mainly because I feel, it's my personal feeling, that we should not have started implementing GST before we are sure that the GST net is fully operational. It has been well tested in respect of all the business processes. Then only we should have started, because the glitches that we have seen now, which has come out while implementing it, could have been detected there. If we are given just 2 more months' time to the GSTN, we can't blame GSTN because all the rules were finalized by the end June and all, and certain other business processes were depending on the rules, so they needed time for all those things. So anyway, that the government must have had its compelling reasons for doing it. So let it leave it here. But what I'm saying is that apart from this GSTN and all the glitches, what happens? There are certain policy issues. Policy issues. You see. the small businesses, they play a very big role in our economy. Now, it is accepted that quite a big chunk of the small businesses, they are in the unorganized sector. So it's a pious intention to bring all of them or a maximum of them into the organized sector. And the first attempt was through the demonetization. I'm not going into it. Then the second was the GST, because of the structure that to get the benefit of seamless flow of credit, one would have come and joined the GST system. But the thing is that everywhere internationally, the small businesses are not touched, because it is cumbersome, it is not cost effective, and it breeds corruption. And generally, if you see the international scenario, the threshold exemption is equivalent to rupees 80 lakhs to 1 crore. Even Malaysia, our neighbor across the Bay of Bengal, 2 years back they implemented their threshold is 86, equivalent to around 86 lakhs. Now here we have kept it at 20 lakhs, which is quite low. Now, even after 20 lakhs exemption, I put it this way, in the right hand I'm giving you exemption below 20 lakh, and then I put a clause there that if you're doing interstate supplies, then you don't get the benefit of exemption. No, here the small business is suffering, because if he is in Mayapuri in Delhi and supplying to Gurgaon and also supplying to Greater Kailash, he will continue to supply to Greater Kailash, but he will not supply to Gurgaon, because then he will have to pay tax. So his business gets shrunk. Another thing was that the reverse charge mechanism. Reverse charge mechanism, by asking the recipient to pay, ultimately what the recipient will do is that he'll say that rather I will buy from the registered buyers and not from the small business.
Sure, that has gotten postponed, Mr. Majumdar, that has gotten postponed. I will come to the reverse charge mechanism in a bit, and how will that fit in to the larger scheme of things. We also have Abhishek Rastogi, partner at Khaitan & Co, joining us. Abhishek, quickly tell me the top three, if you had to say the top three key takeaways in the first 100 days, whether it is, your GST and issues, whether it is getting your dealers and your suppliers into the chain of GST, or whether it was, the classification issues or the law-related issues. If you had to, tell me three quick key takeaways from the first, or the learnings from the first 100 days, what would those be?
See, I think if you talk about the top three takeaways, I would again divide it between the compliance and the system issue, where I think the government has not done really well, because there are issues such as the refund mechanism, which is not in place. There are systems issue related to the filings, related to the matching. There are system issues because even things like advanced authority ruling, these AARs were supposed to be all streamlined and electronically filed. So I think as far as the systems are concerned, as far as these matching concepts are concerned, or as far as the network is concerned, I think, that we could have had a better network. We were aware of the number of transactions which would go on a network, the number of payments which would be required to be done. So if, that analysis was ready, that number was ready, then why was the network not that strong? So I think clearly on that aspect, the government needs to think much more that why was the thinking hat not on before the D-Day? And mind you, it was supposed to come on April 1. There was a deferment of 3 months, which happened. So if the implementation would have been on 1st of April, then I think it would have been a clear mess. So from that system perspective, I think we are not in a very, very good situation. And with a small example, I can prove that. So today, as we speak, the returns for August, we are not sure when we will be able to file the GSTR 3. So for instance, if some person has paid less amount of money while paying the taxes for the month of August, he will have to suffer the interest cost from the date of payment till the time he's filing the GSTR 3. Which means that in that case, what will happen is the date for filing the GSTR 3 has been deferred, and the person will have to bear that unnecessary interest. So there are a lot of system issues which have cropped up. I think on the systems front, definitely the government could have done much better. Then the second point which I want to raise is with respect to the policy issues. So I think there I would I believe that the government was very actively involved with the associations. The GST Council was working. There were a lot of associations. There were a lot of representations which had gone. So there was a lot of brainstorming around those issues. And hence, there were a lot of issues of the erstwhile regime which were addressed in the GST regime. So I think from that perspective, we have a better statutory provisions. And today, mind you, all the states are following that code. So all of the state codes are more or less on the same parameters. While there could be multiple rates, but under the erstwhile regime, even the rates in different states used to differ as far as the VAT is concerned. So I think from that perspective, from the policy, the rates, the statutory provision, I think the government has done really well. And mind you, we are a federal structure. So we not only have the federal government, but also the states, and GST Council comprises of both.
Absolutely. So, it's been a good example. I agree with you, Abhishek. It's been a good example of how state and center can work together for a big project. They've definitely done that. But let's bring it back to stated purposes and how close to that we have come. Because remember, this was promised as a simpler tax. It's still supposed to be a good and simple tax. How far from the simple are we, in your view? And has it really been good for businesses, perhaps for accountants and lawyers, but generally, do you think it has been good for business in terms of ease of doing business?
See, I think as far as the ease of doing business is concerned, these teething problems in the initial month were expected. Yes, because of the systems issue, a lot of businesses are spending much more energy, time, IT infrastructure, and the payments to the lawyers and the consultants. I agree there. So to that extent, there is a hardship. But if you would see the long-term vision of the government or the long-term benefits arising out of GST, I think there is no doubt that this is the tax of the future. There will be a lot of lesser ambiguities. But I think a few of these basic things like formation of the authority for advanced ruling, that has not been formed. I mean, the entire objective was to make it simple and to have more of tax certainty. The tax certainty could have come only when you have provisions like authority for advanced ruling which are in force. So if you have something on paper, but if you do not in effect have the benefit out of those provisions, then I think, then you're just missing the trend of making the points of ease of doing business. So I think from that perspective, there are a couple of things which got completely missed out. So missing of authority for advanced ruling is completely one issue. And if you have seen, I have myself filed about a dozen of writ petition in different courts. You said that you would talk about the 9-4 and all. I would in detail provide you the comments there, but a few of these things are big hardship for sectors.
Okay, Mr. Majumdar, I have this question for you, and I cut you off when you were talking about the reverse charge mechanism. Tell me this, that how does now doing away or deferring this reverse charge mechanism going to impact the revenue base, which, GST promised us is going to increase? How do you see that pan out, and how will it add up? Because as I understand it, that, it's a chain. Once you break a chain, you take some people out of it, it becomes a challenge. And also in terms of, people who are doing quarterly filings, some of them are now supposed to do monthly filings. How will this chain add up if, we have different sets of, rules for different stakeholders?
You can't bring in, none of the countries who have successfully implemented GST has got all the tax people who are supplying goods or services to be in the net. That's why there's a threshold exemption. As I said, it is quite high in Western countries and even in Malaysia and other places, Australia and all. So there we have already kept it very low, meaning there are only very few people are left out. Now let us now concentrate on also reverse charge. Is in a way, it is affecting the small business because unregistered ones, because you are putting the burden on the recipient to pay on behalf of the small business, or I would put it unregistered person, and then you are also doing the compliances.
I'm just looking at the big picture, Payaswini, because it was promised that once GST is implemented and tax base is increased, our taxes will come down. So here's hoping that distant dream comes
think nobody has even realized in terms of the pricing what will affect people, because everybody is grappling with a ton of other issues to be now able to realize that, okay, have prices gone up and gone down?
Well,
only, several companies have made statements as to, okay, prices have gone up or gone down.
So, will prices go down? Will taxes go down? Well, maybe we'll meet in another 100 days, not you and me, but for this discussion to figure out how GST has done. But that's it for now. The Supreme Court's decision to ban firecrackers in the NCR region this Diwali has led to mixed reactions. While many, including environmentalists, have welcomed the move, there are some who are questioning the judiciary's role in doing what they say is the government's job. While ordering the ban on sale of firecrackers in the NCR region, the Supreme Court has said it would like to see whether there would be a positive effect of the suspension, especially during Diwali. The Apex Court also talks about the emergency situation which occurred a day after Diwali in 2016. So why the opposition to this order? And is there merit in the argument that banning firecrackers is a breach of the citizens' liberty to enjoy a religious festival as they may please? To talk about this, I'm joined now by environmentalist and lawyer MC Mehta of MC Mehta Environmental Foundation. Also joining us on the phone line is Haripriya Padmanabhan. She's lawyer in the Supreme Court and mother of petitioner number 1, who was only 2.5 years old, Amol Gupta. Thank you so much for speaking with us this evening on Primetime Debate. Ms. Padmanabhan, I want to start by asking you what you make of the reactions coming in to the Supreme Court's decision to suspend selling of firecrackers in the NCR region, because they're ranging from arguments of is this judicial activism to does it stop people from celebrating their festival the way they want to?
Well, there are a couple of issues here. Now, a lot of the reactions are based on misinformation, I find, most of the time. Now, coming to what their tradition is, in 2005 already in the noise pollution case where firecrackers were only permitted to be burst up to 10 p.m., the Supreme Court has made it clear after hearing an argument from the petitioners and all parties then that bursting of firecrackers is not an integral part of the Hindu tradition of Diwali, that Diwali is a festival of lights. So first, let me make it clear, this whole argument that, this is part of our tradition and culture and how can Diwali be celebrated with firecrackers is totally misplaced and is actually very misleading, because Diwali and firecrackers have nothing to do with each other. Firecrackers came into India sometime in the 1940s with the fellows in Sivakasi setting up there, with the Nadar brothers, setting up their firecracker industry in Sivakasi. So it's really from 1940s that, during Diwali we have started bursting firecrackers. It's not part of our ancient tradition.
But even from the 1940s, now people have been doing it for several decades. So,
no,
I'm giving you the counter argument. I'm giving you the counter argument. I'm playing devil's advocate here because
no, that is true.
They would say that this is what we do every Diwali. Why take the joy out of it?
I have two responses to you, right? Number one, times are changing. The law is also dynamic. The law has to keep changing with the times. Right? In 1940s and 1950s, pollution, A, was not a major concern. B, awareness levels were very, very low. Nobody knew what these firecrackers produced, how these emissions were harmful. Nobody had any idea about it. Today, we are much informed and more educated. So surely law should evolve with time, number one. Number two, this order really affects only NCR and Delhi NCR and not the other states. That is because Delhi is situated geographically at the bottom of a bowl. So during this season, when it's very cold and therefore there is not enough sun for the polluted air to go up in the sky, coupled with crop burning and all the number of cars and diesel cars and everything we have in this country, in the state, and firecrackers, every bit adds to pollution. So our fight, as today's order itself records, is not only against firecrackers. We're also saying that we need better fuel, we need to move to Bharat 6, crop burning has to be banned. In fact, crop burning, funnily, has been banned, but it's still being practiced. There is no enforcement of crop burning. So our approach is multi-pronged. We believe everything should be corrected. But this argument that just because I've done something for centuries, I should be permitted to continue is actually not a correct argument, because, for example, sati was practiced many years ago.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we bring back sati. Child marriage was permitted many years ago. Do we bring back child marriage? No. With time, with education, with awareness, laws are meant to change.
All right, so let me come into this in a little more detail with Mr. Mehta, who's a legendary environmental activist and lawyer. Mr. Mehta, the question about the fact that it's not just firecrackers which lend itself to pollution, and that has been argued. The other aspect of whether this is a case of perhaps judicial activism, that isn't this the job of the governments and not the judiciary to tell people how to celebrate their festival? Because these are arguments that are being made, and so I'm presenting them to you to know your point of view.
No, I'm of the opinion that it is the job of the governments and the state governments and the authorities to control pollution and to see that the people's life and health is not affected. But unfortunately, when the authorities fail, what is the way out? The way is that to go for environmental justice. The people's life and health is when it is at stake, and when the people are suffering, then where to go? So the people have to go to the court when the laws are there and the laws are violated flagrantly by the system, and the government does not enforce those laws. Then they sleep over the affairs. So then the only course before the citizens is to go to the court. And then when the court has given a landmark judgment and orders have been passed, directions have been given, then again, where is the criticism? There should be no criticism at all, because the governments have failed to carry out their duty.
Just that point, Mr. Mehta, on what's Diwali for children without crackers, and considering that schools themselves are now teaching children to stay away from crackers, why do you think that this whole sentiment is coming up? And shockingly, so many people are trying to paint this in a religious light as well.
No, you see that one is that education is very important to all citizens in the country, including children. And when the elders they start bursting firecrackers, then of course the children they see that and they also take part into that. Otherwise, the children are more sensitive if they are properly given education in this way. Similarly, what about the debate is that yes, whether the crackers are more important for the people for celebrating Diwali. It is this festival of lights, and the lights, it is not by firecrackers. So the lights have to be put so that it should really soothe the people's the temperament, and celebration. It can be done in this way rather than bursting crackers and affecting the people life. When I say life, the people, those who are in hospitals. What about those? We are not so sensitive that the people should be protected. That the citizens, those who are lying in the hospitals, those women, the children, the senior citizens, those who get affected, and they have the breathing problems, they have so many other problems. Are we not sensitive to those? So it is not that the city is in totally, where all young people they are living. It is all sorts of people they are living there, and the people have also a right to celebrate in quiet rather than bursting the crackers. So I think that this is the two views, but here I will stand for the people have the right to celebrate the Diwali in a very peaceful way, and it should be celebrated.
Just one point,
people,
Mr.
there
Mehta,
are so many in India. Yes.
People are also trying to make the point that the Supreme Court has stopped the sale of crackers, not the bursting of crackers. Do you think some may try to use that technicality to defeat the very purpose of it?
No, you see that our order is very clear, but if these people they do, it means that they don't have respect for law. The court has shown the path and what has to be done. The people, every time the court has come to the rescue of whether it was environment protection, whether it is a protection of the rivers from pollution, or it is a protection of the people's life and health, or the citizens. And have we noticed that how many children are suffering when they are making the firecrackers in the firecracking industries? This was my case in Tamil Nadu, and all these firecracking industries, the children were huddled at 2 in the morning, and they go to the industries, and then they make and they are giving the party some of 10 rupees what they were giving in 1980s, 86 and 88 and 90s. So the court said that no, it should not be done. So it is not that when you are violating the law, then in that case, if the court comes out with a good order, then the citizens should not criticize, they should welcome it.
Okay. Many are welcoming the order today. Mr. Mehta, thank you so much for speaking to us about this. A veteran of environmental law, MC Mehta, today saying that people should welcome what the Supreme Court has said. It is not a case of judicial activism and overreach, and it is for the children. After all, when you're thinking about whether children cannot play with firecrackers, perhaps spare a thought for the small children who are forced to work in these firecracker factories as well. So here's hoping for a clean, green Diwali where everyone decides to celebrate what the Supreme Court has said.